Hi, and welcome to Hull & Hull TV. I'm Dana O'Brien, and I'm joined by Ian Hull, partner at Hull & Hull LLP, an innovative law firm that practices exclusively in estate, trust, and capacity litigation. Here at Hull & Hull TV, we're exploring the issues around estate planning that affect you. Ian, we've talked about some of the reasons why a will might be contested. So let's talk about how to avoid a costly legal fight and how to bulletproof a will. What's the best place to start?
It's a fairly hefty expectation to bulletproof, and so I sort of look at it, am I looking at a Kevlar suit, or am I looking at sort of layers upon just wearing a flak jacket and seeing if I can make sure that I keep my core elements alive, but not my shoulders and legs.
Let's start with the first layer.
That's right. And I think, one of the things I often will tell my clients at the start is remember the source of the litigation. The data is overwhelming. No, judges don't really like to hear this and they don't like to accept it, but the empirical data is very overwhelming that most estate litigation source is the parents. So those that are either dead or nearly dead are often the cause of the litigation. They have either not taken steps necessary to get things organized or have inflamed things within the family dynamic to essentially create this time bomb. So I often will tell my clients, just take a deep breath. We're going to work through this, but remember the source. Remember, this isn't all your fault.
Mm-hmm. So what do parents often overlook?
Well, I think that's where we can then deflect back to the reality. And the reality is that once the parent leaves or the parents leave, the glue is gone. Now, to what extent that is going to impact on how the family behaves is always a question mark. And you can't actually plan perfectly for that scenario. But you can take steps that are tangible, that will have a strong impact on the likelihood of just keeping the ship this way as opposed to a hard left or a hard right turn on the death of the head or the heads of the family.
Mm-hmm. How effective is a clause in your will to help dissuade family members from
Well, that's a great question because, people want a magic wand and they want to say, well, look, if I just put this in my will I solve all my problems? And the short answer is this: it is very effective. The law is internationally generally accepting of the concept of putting a no contest clause in a will, and its enforceability is generally acceptable, certainly throughout Canada and many jurisdictions in the U.S. But it's always a Band-Aid solution when you're trying to essentially rule from the grave and put a clause in a will that you think is going to solve all your problems. There are other steps that are tangible and are effective that can turn the table around and start to build your Kevlar suit up to make sure that the arms and the legs don't get attacked either.
How important is that family meeting beforehand in dissuading
Well,
challenges?
I think, again, it's a building block, right? Think about a no contest clause. Think about proper communication. But also blame yourself a little bit. If you don't have a properly executed will, or not more importantly, a current will, have you got a current estate plan? Have you gone to advisors that you can actually rely on, have a deep understanding of the issues, and not someone who is trying to do a little bit of everything if you've got a relatively fulsome estate or a complex estate scenario? Have you got, do you know that there are intransigent family members there already? And if they are there, can you break that up a little bit with a good family meeting? These are the kinds of questions that we can ask ourselves and build our pyramid of strength around our estate plan. And don't just look at it as a will, and once I've signed it, I've solved all the problems. But build around it so that at the end of the day, you can proudly say, I have an estate plan. I don't have just a will.
Let's say we've gone through the pyramid plan. We've got something that looks pretty solid. But is there really such a thing as a bulletproof will?
Well, practicing in the area of estate litigation, I mercifully say no, but that's a very self-serving answer. I think the short answer is, again, there is a very strong likelihood that some of these preliminary steps will stop an estate fight. It isn't like you have to build a giant wall to climb over. If you build a few mini hurdles along the way, the pressure of costs and the hassle of litigation and all of those intangibles start to swarm in, and you've found that you have essentially bulletproofed your estate plan.
Or at least discourages the tire kickers, as you would say.
Yes.
Anything more you'd like to add?
Well, I think the last point is, as you said earlier, I mean, the importance of what family meetings and so on, but it's just the importance of communication, and it's effective communication to your advisors. Make sure they know what's going on, make sure that your family knows what's going on, and then you've helped yourselves at the end.
Good advice, Ian. Thank you. And thanks for joining us on Hull & Hull TV.